The people narcissists stay obsessed with are usually not the ones who love them the most. They tend to be the ones the narcissist could never fully control. Because once you stop feeding their ego and once you begin seeing through the illusion, something unusual starts to happen. You stop chasing them and suddenly they begin chasing you. If you have ever dealt with someone like this, take a moment to like this video and subscribe because understanding these patterns can help you protect your peace and recognize manipulation before it traps you again. People who set boundaries narcissists cannot break often become some of the most unforgettable individuals in a narcissist's life. Boundaries represent something narcissists fundamentally struggle with because boundaries limit access, influence, and emotional control. A narcissistic personality is built around entitlement. They believe they deserve your time, your attention, your patience, and your forgiveness no matter how they behave. When someone calmly but firmly says no or refuses to tolerate disrespect, it interrupts that sense of entitlement in a powerful way. At first, the narcissist will usually test the boundary. They may push harder, guilt trip you, twist your words, or accuse you of being selfish or overly dramatic. These reactions are not random. They are strategies designed to make you question yourself so the boundary eventually disappears. Most people bend over time because they want peace. They want the relationship to work or they fear the narcissist's anger. But the person who maintains the boundary does something very different. They remain calm, consistent, and emotionally steady. They do not over-explain and they do not argue endlessly. They simply maintain the limit. This is deeply destabilizing for a narcissist. Control is their main source of psychological security. When someone refuses to be controlled, the narcissist experiences something close to deep frustration. They cannot easily manipulate the situation and they cannot easily rewrite the rules. Instead of gaining power, they encounter a wall they cannot move. Because of this, the narcissist often becomes strangely fixated on the person with boundaries. Even if they insult that person, discard them, or attempt to replace them, the memory of that resistance stays active in their mind. It represents a challenge to their belief that everyone can eventually be manipulated. Boundaries also remove emotional fuel. Narcissists thrive on reactions, arguments, tears, explanations, and attempts to prove loyalty. When a person with boundaries refuses to provide those reactions, the narcissist loses their usual tools. The dynamic stops working the way it always has. This creates a lingering obsession, not because the narcissist respects the person, but because that person exposed a limit to their influence, something the narcissist is constantly trying to prove does not exist. Those who stop feeding the narcissist's ego often become people the narcissist cannot easily forget. Narcissistic personalities depend heavily on external validation to maintain their fragile sense of self. Compliments, admiration, constant attention, and emotional reassurance act like psychological fuel. This fuel is often called supply, and without it, the narcissist begins to feel restless, irritated, and internally unstable. When someone consistently praises them, listens to their endless stories, and prioritizes their needs above everything else, the narcissist feels powerful and secure. But the dynamic changes dramatically when that stream of validation suddenly stops. At first, the narcissist may not notice the shift immediately because they are used to being the center of attention. They assume the admiration will always be there. But gradually, they begin to sense something different. The person who once responded with excitement now answers calmly. The person who once rushed to reassure them now remains neutral. Compliments become rare and emotional reactions become smaller, and the narcissist no longer feels like the most important person in the room. This absence of ego reinforcement creates discomfort for the narcissist. Their confidence is often built on external mirrors, meaning they rely on other people to reflect back an image of superiority and importance. When that reflection disappears, it creates a strange psychological gap. The narcissist begins searching for ways to restore the admiration they once received. They may try charm again, suddenly becoming attentive or flattering. They might attempt guilt by accusing the person of being distant or ungrateful. In some cases, they may even provoke arguments simply to get a reaction. What makes this situation so powerful is that the person who stops feeding the narcissist's ego is no longer participating in the emotional system the narcissist depends on. They are not rewarding arrogance, not reinforcing manipulation, and not playing the role of constant admirer. This shift disrupts the narcissist's usual patterns of control. Because of this disruption, the narcissist often becomes preoccupied with the person who withdrew the validation. It is not about love or genuine connection. It is about the loss of psychological fuel and the uncomfortable awareness that someone who once boosted their ego has stepped outside the system that kept the narcissist feeling superior. Individuals who see through the narcissist's mask often become people the narcissist cannot stop thinking about. Narcissists carefully construct an image of themselves that they want the world to believe. This image may appear confident, charming, generous, intelligent, or even deeply caring. To outsiders, they may seem impressive or magnetic, but this image is often a performance designed to hide insecurity, manipulation, and a deep need for admiration. Most people interact with the narcissist at the surface level, accepting the mask because it is easier than questioning it. The person who sees through the mask changes everything. This kind of person begins to notice patterns others overlook. They notice how the narcissist's kindness often has conditions attached to it. They notice how stories are exaggerated to gain praise. They notice how the narcissist shifts blame, avoids accountability, or subtly manipulates situations to appear like the victim or the hero. Instead of being impressed, this person becomes quietly aware of what is really happening. Narcissists rely heavily on the belief that their image is convincing. Their social power often depends on people believing the version of reality they present. When someone clearly sees the contradictions between the narcissist's words and actions, the narcissist begins to feel exposed. Even if that person never publicly confronts them, the narcissist can sense the difference in perception. The reactions the narcissist may show can vary. Sometimes they attempt to charm the person again, trying harder to win back admiration and approval. Other times they become defensive, dismissive, or even hostile, accusing the person of being jealous, negative, or disrespectful. These reactions are attempts to regain control over the narrative. What makes the situation especially difficult for the narcissist is that the person who sees through the mask cannot easily be manipulated by appearances. Compliments, grand gestures, or dramatic apologies do not carry the same weight anymore. The illusion has already been broken. Because of this, the narcissist often becomes fixated on the person who recognized the truth behind the image. That person represents a threat to the narcissist's carefully constructed identity and a reminder that their performance is not as convincing as they believe. People who walk away without begging or explaining often become some of the most unforgettable individuals to a narcissist. Narcissistic relationships are usually built on emotional imbalance. The narcissist expects to hold the upper hand while the other person tries to keep the connection alive. They rely on the idea that if conflict happens, the other person will chase them, plead for clarity, or try desperately to repair the relationship. That reaction feeds the narcissist's sense of importance and power. When someone chooses to walk away quietly, the usual pattern collapses. In many narcissistic dynamics, the narcissist assumes that if they withdraw attention, give the silent treatment, or create emotional chaos, the other person will come back trying to fix everything. The narcissist expects apologies, emotional messages, long explanations, or attempts to prove loyalty. These reactions reassure the narcissist that they are still the center of the other person's world. But when someone simply steps away without begging, something unusual happens. The narcissist is left without the emotional response they expected. There is no dramatic confrontation, no pleading for another chance, and no desperate attempt to understand the narcissist's behavior. Instead, the person quietly removes themselves from the dynamic and begins focusing on their own life. This kind of exit disrupts the narcissist's sense of control. Narcissists often believe they are the ones who decide when relationships start and end. They expect to be the one doing the discarding. When someone leaves on their own terms, the narcissist loses the narrative they rely on. They cannot frame the situation as easily, and they cannot enjoy the usual sense of superiority that comes from watching someone chase after them. What makes this even more unsettling for the narcissist is the silence that follows. When there are no long emotional explanations or dramatic scenes, the narcissist is left to fill the gap with their own thoughts. They may wonder why the person did not react the way others usually do. They may replay the situation repeatedly, trying to understand how they lost their influence. The quiet departure represents something narcissists struggle to accept: the realization that someone was strong enough to walk away without needing their approval. Those who heal and become emotionally independent often become people narcissists remain strangely preoccupied with. In many narcissistic relationships, the narcissist grows accustomed to seeing the other person emotionally affected by them. The partner may feel confused, anxious, hurt, or constantly seeking reassurance. That emotional dependence gives the narcissist a sense of power. They begin to believe that their presence, approval, or attention is essential to the other person's well-being. At the beginning of many relationships with narcissists, there is often intense connection, attention, and emotional closeness. Over time, however, the dynamic may shift toward manipulation, criticism, or emotional unpredictability. This creates a cycle where the other person may start questioning themselves, trying harder to please the narcissist, or hoping to restore the connection that once felt meaningful. The narcissist becomes used to seeing that emotional struggle and often assumes it will continue indefinitely. But something powerful happens when the person begins to heal. Healing changes the emotional landscape completely. Instead of looking to the narcissist for validation, the individual begins rebuilding their sense of self. They start recognizing manipulation patterns, set healthier limits, and focus on their own emotional stability. Their confidence gradually comes from within rather than from the narcissist's approval. From the narcissist's perspective, this shift is deeply unsettling. The person who once reacted strongly to their behavior now appears calmer and more centered. Attempts to provoke jealousy, guilt, or insecurity may no longer produce the same reaction. The emotional hooks that once worked easily no longer seem effective. Emotional independence also sends an unspoken message. The narcissist is no longer necessary for that person's sense of identity or happiness. For someone who depends heavily on being admired, needed, or emotionally dominant, this realization can feel like a loss of influence. Because of this, narcissists sometimes keep watching or thinking about people who healed after leaving them. It challenges their belief that people cannot move forward without their presence. Seeing someone grow stronger, happier, or more confident without them quietly disrupts the narrative the narcissist prefers to believe about their importance in other people's lives.